Good afternoon. Oh, how awesome it is to talk to you today. I'm Dan Moskal, and today's message is going to be about the difference that you're going to have to make in your life on whether or not your life's going to be a failure and be filled with frustration, despair, hopelessness, or whether or not you're going to create a life and have money and have happiness and have a family, find true love and have kids that you like spending time with. So the best definitions I've found about this difference is by the great Jim Rohn, which I strongly urge you to read, the seven strategies for wealth and happiness. But success, well, let's start here. Failure is a few errors in judgment repeated every single day. That's the way your life is going to turn into failure, be filled with frustration, and not get what you really want from life. But if you practice just a few simple disciplines every single day, your life can be anything you want. And let me just tell you briefly who I am, just a little bit about myself. Before the age of 30, I ran a national television commercial. I was actually 27, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in the future. But I ran a national television commercial on DirecTV hawking men's dating advice. It was under the pen name Willis Combs. Some of you may have seen me. That was a dream of mine, though, quite literally, a very vivid dream of mine to go through in life. Be able to teach guys. I remember being 20 years old and having the dream of, if I could only teach guys like my roommate how to talk to women, that's what I'd really like to do in life. And I turned it into a reality. How cool is that? I've also written 7 books under that pen name. You can go get them at Barnes and Noble and Amazon. You can also find my books under Dan Moskal. But so, anyways, let's go ahead and jump into this. This is really such a this is your life. This is such a valuable thing, and every second you have of this, it's your job and your obligation to zigzag through it. Figure out what you really enjoy in life. Figure out what you're good at. Figure out what your strengths are. Capitalize on your strengths and work on your weaknesses. So, this is what I like to refer to as the 10 Commandments to success. There's some other things, but these 10, if I had, an hour to tell my kids what they needed to follow in life and tell my nephew Beckett, the sweetest little guy in the world, this is what I would tell him because it's that important, and that's how important you are. I want to tell you how you can get. There's so much abundance in this world. Your wealth and your future will have no impact on me except if I can get you wealthy. If I can make you wealthy, I bet we'll have a great relationship together. So that's my objective, is to help you become a millionaire with this message, quite literally. If that's what you really want, then this message will really help you. So please, uh, you know, just pay some attention, because this is quite literally 30 years of my life in a nutshell. I've generated $1 million online in sales. I've worked with huge companies, traveled all over the country, traveled all over the world. Um, Life can be anything we want it to be. It's just up to us to decide what we want it to be. So the first of these commandments is action. If you wait for the ifs and whens of life, even just finishing college or finishing high school before you go and try and make some money, life's going to pass you by. Before you go and try and achieve your dreams, if you're waiting for, I got to wait until I get my college degree, or I have to wait until, this television show's over, or whatever, before you know it, it's going to be tomorrow, you're going to be gone, and life's going to be over. So you got to do it now. Action is the only way I am here today speaking to you. So you got to have some urgency to turn your dreams into a reality. Without action, your life will be like a fart in the wind. You're not going to touch anybody or share anything with anyone. So let me go ahead and tell you real quick about just a couple 10-year-olds' actions. Um, so I was 27. I had come from a place where I was earning huge, affluent sums of money. I mean, thousands of dollars a week. And when you're working for yourself, or when you're working to achieve what you really want in life, there's ups and downs. So I'm not going to get into this too much, but anyways, I was presented with this opportunity to run this national television commercial with the satellite company DirecTV. It was using some online advertising methods, and I'm so glad that I took advantage of it because I've been on MTV. I've been on MTV multiple times. I've been on ESPN multiple times. I've been on all these cable channel networks that you go home and watch, and I watch myself. I've been on all of them, with the exception of like the women's channel, is dating advice for men. But, anyways, I made this commercial out of a bedroom in my mother's house with a black sheet, two, you see them at the auto mechanic store, the $5 bulb lights for lighting, a couple $100 TV camera, and I spent an afternoon watching some 10-year-olds YouTube videos to figure out how to edit it for iMovie. And only because of these 10-year-olds was I able to get on national TV, even if I had to pay for it. That's still something that is a big accomplishment. I'll celebrate it forever. So, anyways, these 10-year-olds, if it wasn't for these 10-year-olds putting up these videos, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. The second commandment here, and these commandments, there's no particular order, but these first couple ones are the most important. Be happy. All the great people, all the great teachers, all the great leaders, that inner happiness is essential. The more inner happiness you have, better attitude you're going to have, the more friends you're going to have, and probably most importantly to you, the more money you're going to earn. Because when you're happy, you're a lot easier person. You have a pleasant personality. People like to be around you. And if you go and look at some of these corporations and businesses, people people are a lot more likely to promote the guy they like or give the guy money for a product or service that people like than they don't like. This is why, Burger King and these different huge corporations have had cartoon spokespersons. Or you want to like businesses, and it's so. Anyways, let's keep going. This is related to your self-esteem, your ego, your self-image, and your confidence. And one of the biggest things that I've learned here, no matter how great your parents are, or no matter how bad your parents are, or not knowing your parents, whatever your circumstances is, your parents are never going to be everything that you want them to be. And what I mean by that is you have to be the best parent to yourself. You have to love yourself the way you would want your parents to love you. This isn't any knock against your parents, especially the good ones. But, if you don't have parents, or you have bad parents, or your parents are never going to be everything you want them to be, you have to be a parent to yourself and love yourself the way parents love their kids. And if, you happen to have kids, all the better. You have to love yourself the same way. You have to be forgiving of yourself, be encouraging, and be supportive. So a big question I get a lot is, how to be happy. What do you have to do in order to be happy? Well, one thing is count your blessings. Don't look for the problems in life. Don't focus on the negatives. Don't say, oh shoot, I've got a math test next week, or, oh shoot, I've got 16 bills I have to pay that I don't have the money for, wherever you are. Instead, be thankful that you're alive, that you can work to make some money, or that you can study for your math test, or, look for the good. Don't focus on the negatives. Another thing that's really key, no matter what's happening, be it good or bad, laugh at it. And it's even more important to laugh at the things that you do foolishly, because we all have foolish behavior in our life. And when we make mistakes, we should laugh at them and laugh at ourselves and not take our life too seriously. And then one incredible key, one guaranteed way to be happy is to go and make somebody else happy. Cheer up other people. If you can cheer up other people and give happiness to other people, they will give it back to you tenfold. And it might not specifically be back from that person. You may be nice to somebody who's actually a jerk to you, but you'll get that happiness. It'll come back around to you. I've heard it called the boomerang effect, and it's both with good and bad. If you're nice to somebody who can't do anything for you, say you buy a homeless guy a meal, that'll come back to you in one way or another. It might not come back in a meal, but that nice, you know, extending a helping hand to other people, that comes back to you. And when you don't extend that hand, or you go and steal, do something bad or lie or do dishonest things, if nothing else, it'll stay in your subconscious or your conscious mind, and that feeling of guilt will not help you get and not help you become a millionaire, not help you become successful. So go and cheer up others, and don't look for things to be returned from you to you for that action. Go and cheer them up and give to them, without any expectations. And commandment number 3 is education. You're probably in school right now here, so education is important, but if you get an average education, which today is going to high school and then, a bachelor's degree, maybe even a master's, you're going to get average results. So how else can you get education? One of the best teachers is trying things. Back to commandment number 1, action. Do it. You'll learn along the way. Experience is the best teacher. Another helpful thing is repetition. Whatever it is you're learning, just like with math, you have to do things a lot. This is like practice. And to tie this all back together, like Michael Jordan didn't sit around and wait to be a good basketball player. He went into action, he practiced, he even got cut, as I'm sure many of you know, from his high school team. And what did he use that negative as? He used it as a way to, really get determined. And, we know what Michael Jordan did with his life and all the good things that, how many other kids, I'm one of them, that pretended to be Michael Jordan when I was a kid. So another thing is reading. Great leaders are great readers. It's reported Donald Trump reads 3 hours every single morning. Your library and the stuff you spend your time reading, if you spend your time, you can spend your time doing the fun things you want. If you have fun reading the comic strip, by all means, make sure you read that, you have fun and be happy with your life. But at the same time, you gotta read the good books that you've heard about, such as Napoleon Hill, such as Jim Rohn. There's a guy, Dan Kennedy, I imagine you've heard about. Read these books. Dennis Waitley's another big one. The people that other people talk about, and the people that you know about, and the people who, some of these people you can only, they have the appearances, and appearances can be deceiving, but the people that have what you really want, such as if you want to be a good basketball player, it'd be really great to go read a book by Phil Jackson or Michael Jordan or anybody that played basketball. If you have friends that, play high school basketball or college basketball or professional basketball overseas or in the NBA, whatever, you gotta learn more than just what you get taught in school. So I imagine you've heard, if you take all the money away from a millionaire, it doesn't matter because he'll replace it just as easily. There's a common saying about this. There's so many people, and the reason they say it is because when a man or a woman become a millionaire, they've learned how to create money, really. How to create money, create value, and create a service that other people will pay you for. Make the world a better place. And the idea is that, you go broke, okay, no big deal. I'll just or things change because life is always changing, you know. And just to illustrate a little bit, when I first got started after I dropped out of college to start my business, but when I first got started, I was working in the credit card. I was marketing, selling, promoting credit cards with, big companies here doing tons of volume. I mean, I don't even want to get into the numbers, but we had an advertising budget of, 7 figures. Whatever we could do, we were running with it, and we just blew things out of the water. And that industry just fell apart with the subprime credit crisis and I went from literally making the most money I've ever made in my life. It was, you know, I'll go ahead and tell you because I was young at the time. I was, 22, 23. I was making over $4,000 a week, and that just completely disappeared. Next thing you know, what was worth $30 one day was worth, $2 a week later. So things change, and life's always changing. Uh, one other last thing I want to mention with this is there's no like school tests. There's no test you're going to take when you're out in the world working a career that, if you get an A on this test, well, we're going to give you $100,000. There's tests you may have to take with work to prove your specialty or your expertise and stuff, but there's no tests like your math tests where, all right, all the kids that get 90 and above get an extra $1 million. And, if you fail this, you don't get anything. Instead, the other tests you'll face are in a lot different form. It's not simply quantitative like that. So, and one other quick thing, no matter what sort of education you get, one of the big reasons it's so essential is because you can literally work hard all your life. You can be a smart person. You can have your graduate degree or a specialization and still wind up broke and unhappy. And maybe, let's not even say the unhappiness because and I gotta just go ahead and share this with you. My dad is one of the smartest guys I know. He's got so many good qualities about him. He was a minister for 30 years. And anyways, here he is, 30 years. He's at the official retirement age, and he's been working 2 jobs, 7 days a week for, I think it's been about 7 years now. That's not the schedule. I hope you don't want that schedule when you are 65. I don't. I love my dad, and that's part of my motivation is to hopefully help him not have to do this stuff anymore and not have to work so hard. It's always important to be doing something, but that's a lot of work. So anyways, commandment number 4 here is the seasons of life. And this is also, we're going to talk about adversity. Really, adversity, setbacks, your ability to turn these into an opportunity to find the silver lining is paramount to your success. I moved around in high school. I went to 5 different high schools, and the silver lining there is I learned how, and I had to, I forced myself. I threw myself into Dale Carnegie stuff, but I learned how to meet people and how to talk to people. And, when I finished high school, I didn't know everything, but I've gotten a whole lot better. That's one of the big strengths I have in this world. And one of the big things I have to contribute to this world is listening to people and communicating with people. And, some people you meet and you just feel instantly comfortable with them. And this stuff, we all have to practice at it. And, when it comes to making friends, practicing at that is very valuable, especially if you end up going to 5 different high schools or a couple different colleges or with your jobs, back to having friends and stuff. It's good stuff. So the other thing about adversity is it doesn't matter where you live, who your parents are, where you're born, everybody faces it. It's equal opportunity. We all have tough times in life. We all fall flat on our face. We all have difficult moments. So, one of my personal difficult moments was I had a brain aneurysm when I was 12 years old. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital. I had brain surgery where the aneurysm burst again. According to the numbers, just sheer statistics, I should have died a couple of times at 12 years old. I'm very thankful that I was so lucky. But let me share this because, when I came out, I had surgery and, spent all day. There was a big emergency and stuff. And, we're talking about me, but imagine what my parents were feeling and what my family and my brothers were feeling. They're worried their little brother's going to die. I mean, that's the kind of the black and white of it. And, while you may not have faced that particular adversity, you will face some adversity. It'll be in a different shape or a different form or a different being, but you'll face some sort of adversity, and it's going to happen more than once. This life is a journey. There's not all the greatest things, but when I came out of brain surgery, I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, I couldn't write. I remember my brothers reading Dr. Seuss books to me. I remember them putting pen in my hand and paper to try and write to communicate. And I remember one day, no lie, I was sitting in the intensive care unit, and I was trying to communicate with my dad that I had to pee. Here I am, 12 years old, and it seems like common sense. I say it now, I have to pee. You just point at your crotch. It's common sense, but I couldn't communicate this. And, it was a really humbling experience to lie down in a hospital bed and pee on yourself at 12 years old and have to have nurses come in and change your sheets, and I'm the luckiest guy in the world, but there's other folks that, they aren't lucky. They've had to relearn how to read. They've had to, they're lucky to be alive, but they've had to. I've talked to a lot of folks, and there's very few people that this happens to where I had a brain seizure, and all these abilities just, it returned like the snap of your fingers. It was like a light switch, and I'm so lucky to be alive, one, and then, to have that, to be able to talk to you today is an incredible gift. I heard a guy who had a spinal injury, and he's now in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And long story short, he was saying that so few people are grateful that they can breathe out of their left lung. You know, Helen Keller couldn't see, couldn't talk, couldn't do a whole lot of stuff, and you've heard of Helen Keller. So let's make sure we're grateful for what we do have, especially during those really trying moments. It's guaranteed in life, adversity, guaranteed. So make sure you can count your blessings and be thankful. God forbid, had I passed away, I would want my family at that time, or I would have wanted my family to have enjoyed the time that they did have with me, those 12 years. And to put this just into a little bit of perspective, I had an older sister that passed away when she was young. So you can imagine how difficult that had to have been for my parents and my brothers. I didn't know what was going on, thankfully. Uh, so the other last thing we're going to talk about real quick is, decisiveness. Like, you must be decisive with your decisions here about your life. And when I say that, I don't mean, don't do research, don't take time to think. But when you make a decision, the vast majority of your decisions, making the right decision is the flip of a coin. Every decision you make can be made right in your life, including the wrong decisions. Because when you make the wrong decisions, that's an opportunity for you to learn and grow as a human being and get better skills and get better abilities and, be a better person. We can always be better. That's a worthy goal to have. And so many people are paralyzed, just paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong decision. You got to try things in this world. And sometimes if you make the wrong decision, you can go back and make it a right decision and say, all right, this isn't right for me. Make sure you stick with it long enough to really know that it's not the right decision. But so looking back in my life, I've made some bad decisions, and some of those I've been able to fix, without too much work. It was just, all right, this really isn't right for me. There's no way in the world this will ever be right. So let's change this decision. So make sure you give it a chance though before you assume it's wrong. The fifth commandment here is serve other people. This is so powerful. I mean, the only reason I'm here today, and every single one of you that's listening, I'm going to be seen and heard in a different perspective. Different words will be heard, different messages will be received from each and every single person. We exist in other people's reality. There's some neat science stuff about this, but the other thing I want to say is only through and with the help of other people can we do anything in this world. You can't get millions unless you're doing something with other people. You can claim to go get the lottery, but the only reason the lottery winnings are so much is because the other people's money. Earl Nightingale, he says that the amount of service you render this world you will be rewarded for financially and monetarily, but you first have to provide the service. And the amount of service you're providing is how much money you will get. It's true. And a lot of people, including myself for many years, I expected a fire to start without spending time like getting firewood and putting firewood in the fire. You can't expect things from things that you don't spend the time, energy, and work for. Andrew Carnegie said anything worth having in life is worth working for. So make sure you're willing to pay the price. The sixth commandment is have some goals, have some dreams, and make sure you are thinking big. But make sure to spend time during your life thinking and dreaming. This is how Albert Einstein changed the world. He was working full time at a patent office, was overseas, and he just spent his time daydreaming, and he had what the geeks call his miracle year in 1905, where he wrote 4 papers part-time while he was working a full-time job, and those 4 papers ended up changing the way we understand our universe. You know who Albert Einstein is today probably because of that year, 1905, when he was dedicating his life part-time and daydreaming at work. Make sure that you make some worthy goals to achieve. If you want to be the next Pablo Escobar, I hope you don't have success with that, but make sure it's worthy. Make sure you're helping other people and serving the world and making the world a little bit better place. I mean, think about some of the inventions that are so, the chia pet. It was a potted plant. I mean, there's all sorts of small little things. What was that blanket a few years ago that became really popular? You saw it all over. There's all sorts of small little things that are just so obvious to us. And you can even take things that exist already and just make them a little bit better. Do a better job. Give more service than the restaurant down the street. Give more service than the other guy, and you'll have people coming to you wanting to give you money. That's how I'd rather run business, people wanting to do business with me. Wouldn't you? Rather than feeling like you're getting somebody's money? I'd rather my customers be happily handing their money over to me, just as I happily hand my money over to so many businesses. There's a lot of great people and great businesses and great services in this world. So make sure that you're one of them and that you have a worthy goal. You're going to leave an influence in this world whether you like it or not. It's totally up to you whether that influence is positive, whether people will be talking about you as a philanthropist, as somebody that they hope to be like, as somebody I've mentioned Napoleon Hill today, Dale Carnegie, these two guys, and Jim Rohn. Some of these guys, Zig Ziglar. Some of these guys have passed away, but because they created something that was so valuable and they left a lasting influence, they left a legacy. I'm able to benefit from. If you're unaware, Napoleon Hill was sent out on a mission to go and interview all the richest men of the time, the most successful people. He went around and spent, I believe it was 10 years interviewing these people. He had help from Andrew Carnegie, the great steel magnate, who, I got to tell you this story. After he had passed away, they found this was his plan for life, to make as much money as he possibly could in the first half of it and spend the second half of his life giving it all away. And according to a book I read, is equivalent to roughly, it was $500,000. This guy was like the Bill Gates. He essentially he gave away tons of money during his time. I mean, so that's really a worthy goal to have, and to help other people. Commandment number 7 is plan. Man, your football team, or the college basketball team, the high school football games, all of these teams take time to come up with a game plan. This is your life. Your life is way more important than any one of the 16 national football games that happen every year during the regular season. Your life is so much more valuable than any sporting event. Your life lasts much longer than 60 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever it comes out to. So please take time to plan your life. And this is a great way to kind of link your goals together and break them down into smaller bite-sized pieces. So for example, let's say you want to write a book. Let's say you're going to give yourself 6 months to write this book. Maybe it's 6 years, but let's just, for our example, we're going to say 6 months. So in this 6 months, maybe you're going to have to get, let's say, 3 chapters done each month. And that would work out to 18 chapters for your book after 6 months. So it would probably be a worthy goal to maybe each week, week 1, week 2, week 3, I'm going to get 1 chapter written each one of these weeks. And there might be a week that you miss, and maybe you'll miss your 6-month deadline. Maybe it'll be 6 months in a week. But if you're going for these smaller, easier to attain goals, and you break them down, it makes, writing a book, if you sit down at your computer and try and start writing, and your plan is to write a book, that's a pretty difficult, monumental task. But if you break it down into, okay, this week I'm just going to write 1 chapter. All it needs to be is 600 words. That'll be 1 chapter. Or I'm just going to write about 1 topic. And so, break down your goals into bite-sized pieces. And some of your goals are going to change. They're going to mold with the circumstances, and be flexible enough to change these. Bill Gates and Michael Jordan didn't set out to be the superstars that they are, and such magnificent people that I'm mentioning them today. They had much more humble goals in the beginning. I bet Bill Gates, one of his goals was to get out of the garage that he started his business in, to actually get into an office. But as he started to achieve these goals, his confidence grew, as mine has, as I've achieved some of my goals in life, as yours will, as yours probably already has. And your goals get bigger, your dreams get bigger. I mentioned Andrew Carnegie. I bet he didn't have the goal, and he certainly wasn't born into the means of saying, I'm going to give away all my money the second half of my life. It was because he had accomplished so much that he, later made that a goal of his. So be flexible enough, but make sure you're working towards achieving something. It's been compared by some of the greats as, your life, you're a ship, and a ship plots its destination. They plot their pathway. They have a rudder on a ship. You know, you have to have some direction with where you want your life to go in order to get anywhere close. And you know what? You might plan the wrong direction. Like, that's normal, but at least you're doing it. If you plan the wrong direction and you start working in the wrong direction and you're flexible enough to see that, hey, you know, this isn't really what I really want to do, such as me with dating, even though I've been on national television with that, you know, spent a whole bunch of money to do it. I don't really, you know, I'm still working on it and I still write about it and I still talk about it, but that's not really what I feel passionate about with my life. That's not that's not the biggest, the real. I'd much rather, and I'm much more excited about talking about these things to help you. I'm much more eager to help you become a millionaire than I am to help you find a wife or the right husband, or you know, how to get past a breakup with a girlfriend, so, or how to talk to women. So you know, I'm still interested in that stuff, but anyways, you gotta, life's kind of a zigzag. You gotta bump up to things, do the wrong things in order to figure out what is right. And I can practically guarantee that you have to do some of the things that turn out to be not right for you in order to find what is right for you and what really does make you, you know, excited to get out of bed and be thrilled to be standing here, you know, talking with you. We're all different people, you know what? For me, this, you standing up and talking to other folks could be the biggest nightmare of a situation. You know, they say public speaking's a bigger fear than death, but this is what gets me excited and has me jumping out of bed and has me smiling ear to ear. And you know, this has been a dream for so many years. I mean, this has been a dream since I was a little tiny kid. So the eighth commandment is believe in yourself. There's nothing, and let me just tell you this. So Milton Hershey didn't have a high school education. You've probably all had a Hershey candy bar. Milton Hershey created a whole empire. You know, believe in yourself. Milton Hershey failed in the candy business 2 times. He, you know, I don't know if they were official bankruptcies at the time, but he was a complete failure at candy twice. But he believed in himself enough to try it a third time, and that third time is when he really had his first success, which you might find interesting to hear wasn't with chocolate. It was with a caramel. Chocolate was a later gamble. I strongly recommend that you go and check out Milton Hershey's biography. It's really neat, along with some of these other greats. You know, Henry Ford. Henry Ford wasn't a formally educated guy, and I got to relate this story. He had been called ignorant or foolish by one of the newspapers, and he subsequently sued the newspaper because he wasn't foolish, and he was on the stand, and the attorneys were questioning him and asking him questions, and you know, you're foolish, you didn't get a real education, you know, you dropped out of school, you don't have any right to have an opinion about public affairs in this country and stuff. And Henry Ford, according to the story, the way it goes, finally had enough of this badgering and kind of snapped on the attorneys, and he said, why should I fill my mind with such useless nonsense as, you know, how many soldiers died in a specific war, or you know, what year a war was fought on, or you know, a lot of this trivia that you get you know, we learn in some of our grade schools and that we get tested on. Why, he said, why should I fill that when I can press a little button and have any one of 10 men go and get the answer for me? He also said, you know, whether you believe you can or you can't, either way, you're right. So make sure you believe in yourself. I mean, you're a superstar. There's no one on this earth that's ever been here before that's like you, and there's no one on this earth that's ever going to be here tomorrow that's like you. That's exactly like you. Look at your brothers. Let me share just an example of my brothers. I have 2 older brothers. One brother's an attorney. He's a retired attorney. He retired after 3 years of law practice and has done millions of dollars in business. He's very successful, as a family. I mentioned my nephew Beckett, the sweetest little guy in the world. Um, and my other brother has debatably lived a life of failure, at least up until now. He has been arrested multiple times. He's spent 5 years in a foreign prison in Thailand. I mean, you couldn't really get much opposite end of the spectrums when you really kind of boil it down, and it's just that easy. Just that believing in yourself and working to get what you really want and having that perseverance and drive. And if you're 37 or 67 and what you have isn't everything you want, like that, it's not too late. It's never too late, ever. Part of these zigzags, we all have different zigzags. And there's many people that have spent time in prison that have created incredibly valuable lives. And if they could teach me way more than I could ever teach them or share with them or any of that, they would be people that I'd want to be keeping my mouth shut. I want to listen. I'd be a fool not to listen. I'd be a fool to say a word. There's many folks. We're not defined by what we did yesterday. Yesterday may be preparation for today, and some of the people that have made some of these really bad mistakes, they're some of the best people to help other folks not make those same mistakes. And they have a lot of contribution. We all have a lot of contribution. It's not but for the grace of God that it wasn't you or me that was born into those circumstances and that pathway that could have found us in a prison, whether it was domestic or foreign or you know doing all sorts of things. I mean, life is it's a precious thing, it's a fragile thing, and we can't judge other people by any of the mistakes they made. you know it's not our job to be judge, jury. We're all people. The Earl Nightingale says being a reasonable person is very key to having what you want and getting what you want, your reasonability and your acceptance of others. And these folks that have made mistakes, don't you think they could probably have a few things to help you, even common sense things to say to help you avoid making the same mistakes? uh, so one of the other things with believing in yourself, and you got to create winning habits, and the younger you are, the easier it is. If you get in the habit of doing some of these things, whether it be writing, whether it be talking, whether it's making YouTube videos, whether it's making skincare products, like the guy I mentioned that had the spinal cord injury, and once he had his spinal cord injury, he created a skincare products because his pores weren't working correctly. This guy couldn't he couldn't hold a pencil, yet he was able to create a skincare product because he still had the power of his mind. That's the most valuable thing you have. And please make that one of your habits, to think and to use your brain to get what you want. Education, formal education, school will help you get some of these things, and they'll help you, teach you how to use your brain. But don't just leave it up to them. You gotta take some time, and you gotta put in some work to really get what you want in this life. Life is not easy. Get yourself motivated. Read books multiple times. My library is one of my biggest places of pride, one of the most valuable possessions I have, and it's worth a heck of a lot more than $1 million. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And if there's anything you can a way to get an idea of who somebody is go spend 10 minutes and look at the stuff that they read or the books that are in their library. That is one of the most telling things about people. If you want to make judgments, don't make judgments from people's skin color or what they've done in the past, or even if they're homeless at the time. Instead, make judgments about what you see in their library. And I understand the homeless guy might not have a library, but you know in all other situations, go look at their library and you can get an idea, and look at the things they're listening to and the things they're watching on television, and This is the people they surround yourself. I know I didn't want to believe it when I was your age, that's for sure. I didn't want to believe it, that my friends were telling about me, and that you're influenced by the people that you spend time with, like it or not. Bottom line, period. So if you're spending your time with people that are focusing on the negatives, they're complaining about their math tests, complaining about the bills, complaining about how unhappy they are, complaining about things going wrong in life, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to complain. That influence is going to rub off on you. And I'm not telling you not to. Everybody complains from time to time, but make sure you're not spending all your time with people or things focusing on the negatives. uh, and commandment number 9, and this is quite simple. If you want to be successful, just do it 1 minute at a time. A lot of successful minutes adds up to a lot of successful hours. This is kind of like the AA people say, and a lot of successful hours, one day at a time, a lot of successful hours adds up to a lot of successful days. A lot of successful days adds up to a lot of successful years. A lot of successful years adds up to a successful life, which is what you want and what I want and what we as human beings all want. We all want to be successful and happy. So if, one of the ways I'm trying to serve you, commandment number 5, is to help you become successful, both financially and happy. And being here talking to you today sure makes me feel successful, and it brings me an incredible amount of happiness. So thank you. And, this is one of the kind of key things here is you've heard it a few different ways, I'm sure. The path less traveled, or do what's tough, but you really gotta don't do what everybody else is doing. There's a if you follow the crowd and follow the herds, you're gonna end up like everybody else. If Friday night and Saturday night, or Monday night, or whatever the night is you're going out spending your time, all your time at the bar, you're going to end up like everybody else at the bar. Or if you spend what you spend your time on and where you spend your time, and if instead you take even just one Friday every month and spend your time instead doing your schoolwork, or doing creating a second business. The internet today has created so many opportunities for every human being, regardless of their age, where they live, what they do, how old or how young they are. The internet has given us incredible opportunities, not just to communicate, not just to learn, not just to get information, but to also earn money if we're providing some service and value to other people. And I know you have plenty to contribute, plenty of ways to help people, whether it's to help them get through difficult times, or help them, you know, talk to women or talk to men. So, and the last 10th commandment is have a pleasing personality. This goes back and is in part, just enjoying life and the moments, the feelings, and the seconds, and the experiences we are given in this life. Life is the most precious thing. So whether, if you're in a wheelchair, that guy I've mentioned a few times now, he enjoys his life. And he doesn't have everything he wants, but he enjoys what he's got. So please enjoy the fact that you can see if you can see. Enjoy the fact that you have hands and all your fingers and your arms if you do. Enjoy the fact that you can talk, that you can hear this, that you can think. Be grateful for it. Enjoy those moments when you're meeting and dating your first boyfriend or first girlfriend. Enjoy falling in love. There is no guarantees in life. There's not a guarantee 5 minutes from now. There's not a guarantee 3 weeks from now. So you got to do it now. And that's both with happiness and being, getting what you want and doing what you want. And remember, this is all a zigzag. Very rarely Practically never in your life will you ever follow. There's never a straight path. You zigzag through life. You bump up against things. And the people that are unhappy in life and don't get what they really want from life and don't get anywhere close to achieving what they really want out of life are people that have given up on figuring out what it is. There are some fundamentals and principles to getting what you want and being successful and being happy. We've had, 2,000 years of mankind come before us. Don't you think we could probably learn something from each and every one of these people, even if it's just what not to do with our life? You know, Jim Rohn says it best. I've heard him say it a couple of times. It'd be great if we could go and find a failure and have him teach us, or a homeless guy, and have him teach us all the things we shouldn't do in life. But people and mankind aren't going to do that because nobody wants to give their money to somebody that's a failure, or that isn't able to get what they want. And I say homeless, I don't mean anything, because there's many good, worthy people, including myself, who was homeless at points in life, including my friends. And I promise you, if you make these errors in judgment, and I know I'm not 16, 18, 14, whatever it is age you are, or 67 or whatever, but these few errors in judgment is how people become drug addicts. It's how people become criminals. It's how people end up committing murder. It's how people become gangbangers and do things that they couldn't forget if they wanted to. They could spend the rest of their life doing good deeds, and it wouldn't make up for it. And we're gonna make mistakes. We can't dwell on yesterday. Yesterday was preparation, but make sure that your days aren't filled with continuous errors in judgment. And you're smart. When that inner voice inside of you somewhere, especially when you don't want to hear it, will let you know when you're making errors in judgment. Instead, be the superstar that you really are. There's a lot of different ways that people say this, but what I like to say, think about every single person was a kid at some point in time. We enter this world and we have all the skills, all the abilities, we have everything we need. I like to compare it to, we enter this world as a rough diamond. One of those rough diamonds that isn't all shiny and, on a woman's ring finger. We're a rough diamond, and it is through our life. It's our job. It's what we must do and expect to do, and we can ask for help. You should ask for help from other people and whatever your higher being is, because you're gonna need help. Life's not easy, so don't be afraid to ask for help. But it is only through help, work, dedication, persistence, belief, and action, and these other commandments we were talking about, can we create and live a life that is a real diamond, a life that is of real worth, a life that is of real value, and leave a legacy. And one of my dreams in my life is to be mentioned among the folks like Napoleon Hill, like Jim Rohn, like Dan Kennedy, like Dale Carnegie, and there's so many countless others, like Dennis Waitley, like W. Clement Stone, like Jack Canfield, like Milton Hershey. There's so many good people and good things. I hope to be muttered as some guy that thinks or wishes he was those people, or is just be muttered in the same breath. I'd be thrilled to have reached that many people and touched that many people. And so my name's Dan Moskal, and I've got a website, and I want you to check it out. I also want you to come, and I don't want this to be a one-time experience between you and I. I really, if nothing else, I want to give you some words of encouragement in your time of need, and I hope you remember this message to you here today. This is really this is the most valuable things. This is everything I've learned in my life through all the successes of appearing on TV, through the failure and the humiliations from different high schools. I spent time, I didn't get to tell you about it today, but I spent time in high school in a juvenile detention center. It took me 10 years to graduate from college. I'm just there's Dan Kennedy. The guy's a multi-millionaire, and by his own self-admissions, he couldn't get hired to work at Wendy's. So why is it that he's able to become a millionaire and you can't, or I can't, or the other guy that doesn't have a college degree like Dan Kennedy become a millionaire? Did you know, and this may be a little bit dated, it could be a couple of years old, but you're more likely to earn more money according to the richest people list if you don't have a college education? You're more likely to have more wealth if you're on of those richest people. Milton Hershey didn't have a college education, and I'm not telling you I think you should go to college. It's definitely going to help you, and it'll help you learn to think, and you'll meet a lot of people. And I was a sociology major. That's the study of people. That's been incredibly helpful, and I love those 10 years. Plus, college is an experience. It's a special time in your life. So, love your life, enjoy these moments, and no matter where you are, if you're in the worst place, no, things can get better, and things do get better. But we're in control. We're in control of ourself. Like they say in AA with the Lord's Prayer, and I'm not an AA member, power to everybody that is. I have no problems with it. I think it's a great cause, but what's the Lord's Prayer, how it goes, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. You know the rest. So my name's Dan Moskal. Please, I'm going to ask you to go and share this with your friends, family, your school administrators, your college professors, you name it. Tell people I want to speak to you. I want to come back. I want to visit my website. I really want to help you, and I am committed to turning you and helping you get everything you can in any possible way I can. And that's what I gave you today. This is what, if I had an hour left of life and my nephew or my kids wanted to know the secrets to life, or the ways to get what they really want, or the ways to have anything, the things I've learned in my lifetime, and I've learned through the help of all these other great, just top of the surface people I've mentioned who have been so influential in my life, whose books I've read over and over and over and over again. Maxwell Maltz. I mean, there's endless great people with great messages. But at the end of the day, you know what's best for you. It's your life, and you're ultimately responsible for whether or not, regardless of your circumstances, and regardless of what's happened to you yesterday or what you did yesterday, it's your life, and you're responsible for figuring out where you fit best, what fits best with you, what you enjoy best, and you're responsible for your happiness. People are ultimately as happy as they choose to be. From prisoners in war to, and it's tough if if you're young right now and you are in a place of unhappiness, but I promise it will change. You're going to have to do some work. Even going off to college is a big change. I came into my own a little bit with that, but anyways, this is it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for paying attention. Please comment below. Let us know. Leave a comment and talk with us here in the future. Visit Dan Moskal University. We want to come and talk to you. And have a great afternoon. And don't forget, action. Do it now.